Why don't we move forward on to something we've been really excited for? Damon Lindelof's Watchmen for HBO. Um, eh, was this a remix?
Mhm.
Uh, uh, remix of the famous Watchmen comic book series. The source material is incredibly popular, and the movie back in what, '09.
Yep.
Um,
Snyder.
yeah, Snyder. He did release the Snyder cut. Came and it was received, I think, with mixed reviews. And I don't know where you fall on it. Maybe that's a good place to start. I really liked Zack Snyder's version of Watchmen. I thought it was actually a really engaging movie, and I liked the way he shot it and the whole feel to it. How did you feel about it?
Yeah. Snyder was the person that finally got that movie made. I know it was Aronofsky, tons of other people, Neil Gaiman. Like so many people tried to make Watchmen happen, and people have long thought it was unfilmable because of the depth of the text.
Mm-hmm.
And then Snyder finally got it across, and I think visually, it might be his best movie in
Yeah.
terms of the flair that is a Zack Snyder visual film. It's that in 300.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very faithful adaptation of the plot of Watchmen, like the A to B plot of it all. And I like it for that regard. I find it very entertaining, and it's nice to look at. And I have the Blu-ray actually, but it doesn't really capture the subtlety of the work or the overall message of the comic. So it really depends on what you
Mm-hmm.
want. Like in terms of like a full adaptation, I guess it fails because I think everything would, because like there's so much deconstruction of what superheroes mean, and there's so much psychological stuff going on in the Watchmen comic from, was it 80, 86? I think it is
Yep.
85. Um, that's just not there in the movie, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unfortunately, Alan Moore, who's the co-creator of the comic, he feuded and fought with DC Comics for years over this work, and he has disavowed any and all adaptation spin-offs. 2012, they did the Before Watchmen prequel comics. I actually have those. I have not read them though. Um, like he wants nothing to do with this, and he feels it's like a bastardization, or what do you call it? I think in one of his quotes from like 10 years ago, he didn't want Watchmen prostituted out, I think is how he said. And like
Wow.
even Gibbons, his co-writer, kind of he's been more diplomatic, but it's kind of like through like gritted teeth, where he's like, yeah, we thought we did it good. We don't need to add to it. We should just leave it alone. It's so
Mm-hmm.
good. And in a sense, that's right. But we live in the world of IP. Warner Brothers owns Watchmen, and currently, Doomsday Clock, an ongoing comic series, the past 2 years. The 12th issue comes out in December. That's a thing where, like, through time, multiverse shit, Superman and the Justice League cross paths with the actual Watchmen, and they got brought into that full DC universe in this
Mm-hmm.
comic event series. Obviously, Alan Moore fucking hates that that's a thing.
Right.
But David Lindelof, from the start, said that he did not want to adapt anything. So he did not want to do what Snyder did. He wanted to remix it, as you said. So, well, I think Snyder shouldn't get too much shit for the movie. And I don't think he really does, to be honest. Damon's not trying to do that, which I think is a very smart tact, 10 years later.
Yeah, and he's been pretty open in interviews about how this was something that was very important to him, how much he liked the comics, and how he felt a lot of anxiety taking on this project because he wanted to make sure that he did it justice, and that he was, I think, addressing the spirit of Watchmen, and which I think is probably where a lot of those quotes come from, the creators of not wanting to have any part of what it's become now, and how they're trying to like tie it into the DC world, because Watchmen, in a sense, created its own superhero world, but it was a major commentary on society at that time, but also a critique of superheroes and how people like built them up in these comics. And
Right.
yeah, and I think just to one last thought on the movie, I think Snyder made more of a superhero movie out of it. A lot of the flourishes, especially in terms of like the action scenes and things like that, felt very much like out of a comic book, in terms of like the like jiltedness of it, where it would be like slow 1 second, then like very fast and like slamming people down. But I think what Lindelof does really well in this premiere, kind of bring it around, is he captures that world building of Watchmen and really putting you in a place in time of obviously affected by the events of the original comic in the present. And he really kind of gives you a sense of all these weird things, all these differences that were made by the events of that time. But it's interesting because the series starts off in 1921, the Tulsa Race Massacre. Um, where this black boy is saved in a sense, and then there's the shot afterwards where he's kind of like out on his own with this baby, and trying to like figure things out. And a really interesting way to start it off, and then you kind of move into more of like the present day stuff where you have Regina King's Angela, and Don Johnson playing the police chief, kind of like trying to figure out this murder from the 7K,
Seventh Cavalry.
Yeah. The terrorist group that wears the Rorschach masks, and it kind of shows you how, like, Regina King plays a modern superhero who's working with the police force, who all themselves wear masks as well, and kind of the two ways that the Watchmen have been taken as symbols within the society. I think it's really interesting. Any like general thoughts about the premiere that maybe we can talk about some of the things we liked most about it or didn't like?
Oh yeah, a ton. I on its face, I love the premiere. I thought it was incredibly engaging and does a great job of getting you excited for the season to come. It's a 9-episode season. I know the critics saw the first 6, and without spoiling anything, they've kind of universally been saying that things are paid off that are teased early, which is great to hear. And you mentioned the Tulsa Massacre, of course. I mean, that's no light thing to show on TV, even if it makes for compelling TV. I mean, that's the bloodiest day of racial violence in our country's history. A lot of people don't know that. It's not like super well reported or anything, but that's certainly a choice. And then I think having that frame, this Tulsa setting, and how the cops are the way they are there, with like their guns being locked, and having that shown through a converse of a black cop pulling over a white guy at a traffic stop, and the obvious parallels to anxiety at the police in real life. I thought that was done really tactfully. But I mean, you mentioned the world building in general, and in the comic and in the movie, it's all about the nuclear panic. That's what drives and strikes fear into everyone in the mid 80s. And
well, the comic I think takes place in the 70s, right? Because it's Nixon who's president at that time.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. It's an alt history. So Nixon, thanks to Dr. Manhattan, wins the Vietnam War and wins multiple elections. And Nixon's like a very popular president. Funny enough, at the end of Watchmen, Robert Redford, the actor, of course, is going to run against him. We know in this series that Redford's been president for long ass time. So that's a cool little tie-in. You saw Nixon on Mount Rushmore. Squid, transdimensional. Squid falls from the sky. It's a callback to Ozymandias's plot to wrap everyone in the movie. I think it does a good job of setting the world and also bridging a lot of questions that is very interesting in terms of why the cops were the mask specifically, and just how everything got to where it is. And we know that Jean Smart, her character, is in fact the second Silk Spectre from Watchmen, and she'll be coming up soon. Does Dr. Manhattan actually show up in this show? We saw him on a newsreel. Is that even real? Could that be fake from the government? I don't know. But it's definitely enticing. And of course, we know Jeremy Irons, we assume, is playing the
Ozymandias,
the alive Ozymandias. So what the hell goes on there? I don't know. But he's writing a play about Dr. Manhattan, the watchmaker's son. That's who Manhattan used to be. So that's cool. But yeah, I just think like tonally, it's like replacing nuclear panic with white supremacist fears. It's very much smartly, even if it's a little obvious, bringing the Watchmen story and themes to today, and the show's taking place today. So I just really like the whole premise and the ideas we're getting started with. On top of that, the lead is Regina King, who
Yeah.
has 3 Emmys and an Oscar in like the past 5 years. Like, I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, and King is awesome in it, but just like so many of the scenes and the style like stand out so vividly. Whether it's, you talk about that really tense moment where the cop is murdered by the 7th Cavalry, and he's like calling to get his gun released, and how
Right.
like tense that is, or when Regina King gets, she's at the school with her daughter, and the red furations, and then you have the squids like falling, and then all of a sudden she heads out and is a superhero all of a sudden, and tracking down this guy who might know something about the killing, and it's at the police station, and how that all looks, and they have the orb, or what was that called, like
Yes,
the
some kind of
sphere.
interrogation thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
and just like the look of it all, it's so like stylistically well done, and I feel like so many like classic little Lindelof like framings, and just the way he goes about like little things of it really remind me of like shots from The Leftovers and things like that. And he's also able to kind of bring in like the human element in a lot of it, like you see when Don Johnson's Judd is like singing Oklahoma around the table to everybody, and how like he interacts with everyone, and the relationships he has. But you also know that he's like a person who behind closed doors is like authorizing police to basically go out and like shoot people if need be, to like take down the 7th Cavalry. It's it just so well structured. Even if I don't understand everything that's going on yet, I get the sense that the show really knows where it's going, and it does such a good job of setting up set pieces, man. Like that raid on the farm was thrilling to watch, and exhilarating, and you're going to get like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 scenes like that every episode. I'm just really excited where the show can go.
Yeah, man. It's I'm just excited that it's as good as it is already.
Mm-hmm.
Because the trailers didn't do a whole lot for me. I was like, all right, this sounds like good proof of concept, but like you just can't get a sense of the tone
Mm-hmm.
or how tactfully the tone is being handled until you actually watch it. So I'm just excited that it's great. So this is good. I just reread the comic
Nice.
the past month, so it's been on the mind. Actually, I want to watch the movie too, just to refresh my memory. I haven't seen that in a while. But yeah, I'm excited as hell for this. I think it's funny. Actually, I want to pose this to you. I saw this going around. Is this show pro cop? Now, the critics haven't really mentioned this, so I assume it gets much more gray. But there's a lot of police in the first one, and they're the leads. They're the good guys, so we think. That might be a problem for some people. I don't know. Didn't come to mind to me. But what do you think?
I think the first episode is very like, if it has to be pro one way, probably pro cop, because they're going up against, it seems like, white supremacists with the 7th Cavalry. However, the cops in this also are like basically these masked vigilantes in a sense, in terms of how they are going about things. And I think it's going to get a lot murkier. So I think it's too early to say, maybe, but
right.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I didn't even really consider that much.
Also, I like the touch of American Hero Story. Looks like Ryan Murphy meets Spider-Verse. Looks awesome. I want to see that shit. Give me more Hooded Justice. Give me more of Dollar Bill. Barely get them in the comics, Yeah.
I wanted to shout out Archie real quick. Getting some shine in the first episode, just lighting up some Nazis in the sky. I'm all for that. Yeah, I like to see more of that. Maybe Rick Dalton could use that in his next film.
Rick fucking Dalton.